Hey coders, welcome back to Tilly Decoder, where we will explore the latest tools and techniques to level up your development skills. Today we're diving into something big, Inertia.js 2.0, which has just gone stable this week. If you've been waiting to see what's new or are curious about what makes Inertia.js so special, this video is for you. So what exactly is Inertia.js? Let me break it down. Inertia.js is a framework designed to make building modern single-page applications, or SPAs, way simpler. It works as a bridge between your backend, like Laravel or Rails, and your frontend, whether you prefer Vue.js, React, or Svelte. It lets you deliver dynamic, interactive web apps using server-side routing, controllers, and views. The best part? There's no need for a separate API. You work with the tools you already know and love. In simple terms, it gives you the dynamic feel of a full SPA application without the overhead of managing complex APIs and massive JavaScript bundles. It's magic for developers who love server-side frameworks but still want a modern user experience. Now let's talk about Inertia.js 2.0. This release is packed with features that take it to the next level, giving you more power, flexibility, and ease of use. So what's new? Let's take a look at some of the highlights. First up, we have asynchronous requests. Inertia's core has been rewritten to handle asynchronous operations, making your app more responsive and allowing for non-blocking requests. This is a huge step forward for performance and scalability. Secondly, we've got polling built right in. Whether you want to auto-refresh data, show real-time notifications, or fetch updates from the server without user input, polling makes it easier than ever. Another awesome addition is WhenVisible. This feature allows you to load data or trigger actions only when an element is visible on the screen. It's great for performance optimization and creating engaging user experience. If you're tired of pagination, Inertia.js now has a super easy way to implement infinite scroll with either React, Svelte, or Vue.js. It just makes it super simple to load more content smoothly. One of my favorite features is deferred props. You can now delay fetching specific props until they are needed, reducing initial load times and speeding up your application. Another exciting feature is prefetch. Inertia now allows you to prefetch data for links before users even click on them. This means faster navigation and a smoother overall experience for your app. Whether you're an Inertia Pro or just hearing about it for the first time, version 2.0 brings something for everyone. Over the next few minutes, I'll show you these features in action so you can see exactly why Inertia.js 2.0 is such a game changer. So grab a coffee and let's dive into the new world of Inertia.js 2.0. By the end of this video, you have everything you need to take your apps to the next level. Let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new Inertia app here. Let's call this Inertia 2.0 stable. And let's use JetStream as the starter kit. And we don't need any of these, we're just gonna ignore them, have pests set up. And for now, in this case, I'm gonna use SQLite as a database. Can run the migrations. And while this is installing, I'll go ahead and open up the application in Visual Studio Code. So let's take a look at the application now. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do now is let's go ahead and ensure we use the 2.0 in here, and the same goes for package.json, where we're going to go ahead and have this set to 2.0. Now, depending on when you're watching this video, you may already have this set up with the Laravel installer, and it will come by default with the 2.0, but given this video is so new, this isn't the case. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal here, and I'm going to say composer update and npm install. And we are now upgrading both of them to the 2.0 version. So now we can run npm run dev, and I'm going to go ahead and create a user. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do now is inside our web.php file, I want to move this dashboard here to its own little controller. So let's go ahead and say php artisan make controller. Let's call this dashboard controller. And all we want to do then is just get rid of disclosure and have dashboard controller, class, make sure it's imported up here. And then in here we just need to have a public function invoke and return inertia dashboard. Just like that. And it's exactly the same thing. Now, the first thing I want to go ahead and take a look at is if we open up our inspector element right now and hover over any of these links looking at the network tab, you can see that we don't see anything happening here. But one of the new features in Inertia.js 2.0 is the ability to prefetch these links. So if we went into our navigation menu, which would be inside app layout, just like this, in here we can go ahead and, for example, say inside the nav link to our dashboard page, we can prefetch it. So inside nav link, we can go ahead and say prefetch. And if we then go ahead now and hover over it, refresh. Let's just make sure this is also running. Just gonna restart it. And we can do the same thing for other things, such as in here where we have the profile. So if we go to drop down link, in here we can prefetch. And you can see this now shows in here. This is because we are now essentially loading it upon hovering the link, which decreases the time it takes to load the page, which is really cool. So that's the first thing I wanted to take a look at. The other thing we can go ahead and take a look at is how can we go ahead and use the WhenVisible component. So inside our dashboard, let's get rid of this welcome component here, and let's go ahead and add in a WhenVisible component in here. This takes by default in some data here, so we need to pass that through in our controller. So if we go to our dashboard controller, we can go ahead in here and just for now pass through some users, grab them all. Now, I wouldn't recommend using the all method because that's a very inefficient way to do it, but for the purpose of demonstrating this, I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and pass the users in here, and then we can go ahead and say define props users, and we just say data users, and then we can go ahead in here and have a template for the fallback, which could, for example, be a skeleton or just a div in here saying loading. And then we can go in here and have a div with a v4. We can have user in users, and for now just pass through the user information. So if you go back to the dashboard page, you can see we have this user windowing through here. And you can see there's loading here if you refresh very quickly. So this will only load it when it's visible. Now, what about infinite scrolling? How can we go ahead and add that? So later on, if you're watching this, there may be an infinite scroll component that's come out. Currently, that is not a component as of Inertia 2.0, the stable release. So for now, we're going to go ahead and do it the simplified way, but not as simple as it will be later on with Inertia. So if we go into our dashboard controller in here, we can create a private function which we can call get users, and we will return in here link for our paginator, and then in here we want to go ahead and return user paginate. And we can say 10 in this case through function, in this case user user. And then we just want to go ahead and have an array in here. In here we can have the ID, name, email, and created ad. So with the created ad in here as well, and all of these details, we can go ahead now in here and change this to this inertia merge. So we need to go ahead and import this from inertia. We need to say merge, and we can have a shorthand function in here where we say this get users, and we want to grab the items in here. Then we want to have the current page, which we can get in this case by saying this get users current page, and the last page as well if you want to. And by now passing this through, we can go ahead and work on the component here. So for this to work now, we need to essentially change this around. So we need to first and foremost have this with params instead. And in this case, we want to have an object in here. In here, we want to have data, page, and that's going to be current page, which we're going to just create up here. So we're going to have current page, and in this case, +1. And then we're going to have below only users current page, and then we're going to have preserve URL in here to true. Let's go ahead in here as well and say key user.id just to make sure we don't break the component. And outside of that, let's take a look at how this would look now. We're getting an error in here, so trying to call this get users. And this is the spelling error here, so that's how it's supposed to look. And then we can go ahead and move this out of the WhenVisible component for now. And let's go ahead and add this up here. I'm going to just format this so it looks a bit better. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is inside our application, we can go ahead and say PHP tinker. And we can go ahead and say user factory. And for now, we need to just fill out this two-factor one here. So if we go into our user factory, we also need to go into our user model. Go exit and then open it again. Let's go ahead and just migrate actually, just to be safe that everything is there. There we go. That should hopefully fix that issue. And then we also need to go ahead and add the profile photo path. And let's just go ahead and make sure that we also have the remember token sorted here. So let's go ahead and exit. Just clear cache. If we head into migrations, create users table, we do have the profile photo path set here. And we do have it set in here as well. So let's go ahead and exit. Alright, so what I've gone ahead and done now is I've gotten rid of profile photo path and team ID here. So if we go ahead and say user factory times 20 create, or maybe even 1,000 here. Now we have created 1,000 users. And we also want to make sure that we just go ahead and maybe change the design a bit of this page. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add all of these divs in here. And just go ahead and make sure we have all of this sorted. Just to have some spacing here. And currently it doesn't seem to be working. So let's go ahead and take a look at why this infinite scrolling part isn't working yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add this code in here. You also need to make sure we have the last page in here, which is going to be set as a number, and then inside our dashboard controller, let's make sure we're also returning everything correctly in here for the user. This dashboard component should look something along these lines. So to go ahead and fix this issue, the issue is just the overflow hidden here. So if we get rid of that, refresh the page, and for now we'll just get rid of preserve URL. And you can see we're now able to load more users here. Still having an issue here where we seem to be stuck at this page and only be able to load it once. That's because we need to pass through the always parameter here as well. And I think we can go ahead then and add preserve URL to true in that case now. Let's go ahead and get rid of the page number in here. And I think we may have to get rid of the preserve URL again. And now it just works seamlessly. So yeah, that's essentially how we're implementing the infinite scrolling aspect of Inertia.js. And we can just go down here and scroll down to the thousands item we have. Now, another nice feature that we have in here is inside Inertia.js 2.0. It's the ability to have encrypted history. So we may need to go in and publish the vendor configuration here. In this case, we need to go ahead and search for Inertia. Publish this, and that will go ahead and copy the configuration file in. So if you go into inertia.php inside the config folder, in here we can then by globally enabling the history encryption. So the way that this works is a great example is here. If I go ahead and I log out of this page, I then go ahead and go back, you can see that it's still stored in the state here. So what this does is if we go ahead and enable this, and then we go ahead and just log in. And just wait for this to happen. The first thing we also need to of course sort in here is say herd secure. This will now go ahead and essentially add HTTPS to the application. It won't work without it. And then we can go ahead now and log out. What will then happen is if we click back, it will still be the same issue because we need to modify our history upon logging out. But looking outside of that, that is essentially everything that happens here. So upon logging out, we just need to figure out where exactly that function is called. And if we go ahead, in this case, because it's using Fortify with inertia here, if we head into our terminal, we need to say root list, and we need to say logout. You can see this happens inside the authentication session destroy controller here. So at the moment, there's an issue with this here because this is inside a controller here. So inside our app service provider, we can configure this by having in the Fortify. And then we should be able to hopefully modify upon logging out. So we probably have to register and make a response essentially for this. But yeah, you would have to go ahead and essentially clear the history. Now, if you're using Laravel Breeze, you'll be using a controller, which will allow you to do that. Now, the easiest way to do this would essentially be inside the dashboard controller. For now, it's just to create a public function logout. And then we can go ahead and say auth logout and return redirect row to login. We can also go ahead and use the inertia facade or the helper function and say clear history, just like that, and that will go ahead and essentially log the user out. So what we want to go ahead and do now is inside our web.php file, we want to just create a new root in here called logout 2 or something like that. Again, this is a bit of a hacky way to do it, but you can modify the Fortify one here. I'm just going to show it the faster way here. So if we go ahead and now have this dashboard controller, and we reference the logout method in there, all we have to do now is use logout2 here inside our navbar. So if we go ahead and log in, we click logout. We need to make sure that this web root is post as well. And if we now go ahead and click logout, and we then click back, it goes to the login page. So that's essentially what it does. Now, if you wanted to enable this encrypt history, in this case at a case-by-case basis, we can go ahead inside our inertia configuration, which is just down here, turn this to false, and go ahead in here and say inertia encrypt history, and then that would go ahead and enable it on a case-by-case basis. Now, if you want to enable it globally, but except for one page, we can just set in false and it will disable it for this specific page. So that's essentially everything there is to show in relation to the encrypt history. It's a nice little feature that is with inertia. Now, another thing we can go ahead and take a look at is the polling. So in this case, it will just be using the poll, and you can then go ahead and contribute to when it's finishing and when it's starting, and we can have auto start set to false as well if needed be, and start the polling upon clicking a button. Now, I'm not going to go over all of the other features with Inertia.js 2.0, but that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching this course. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.